Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Chair for yielding and for helping get this process to the floor, despite so many attempts by the Democrats to block this effort to cut waste, fraud, and abuse in government spending. And we've seen it over and over and over again. You know, every time we have tried to get our economy back on track, to put more money in the pockets, by the way, of hard-working families, as we just succeeded in doing with the One Big Beautiful Bill. Every step of the way, the only people trying to block that effort have been Democrats in Washington. And they are getting nervous, feeling the heat from people back home, Mr. Speaker, that are angry, saying, why did you vote? Those waiters and waitresses who make $32,000 a year, when they keep hearing them talk about billionaires and voting not against billionaires, they're voting against $32,000 a year waiters and waitresses, cops working the beat who don't want to have to pay overtime taxes, and we protected them from that. Every Democrat voted no, Mr. Speaker, so I can understand why they come up here and they want to talk about anything other than what we're actually doing to deliver for those families. Interesting how they talk about Jeffrey Epstein, because for 4 years, Mr. Speaker, President Joe Biden had those files, and not a single Democrat that you're hearing tonight tried to get those files released. And so the House Republicans are working to do that, and of course, they're in a tizzy, Mr. Speaker, because they're finally being exposed for covering it up for 4 years. And so let them continue to come up and talk about all the deficit spending that they created, while they cite, when they talk about, oh, gee whiz, the One Big Beautiful Bill, you know, they talk about the House. You look at our scorekeeper here in the House, Mr. Speaker, and they say, oh, it's going to add $4 trillion to the deficit by giving people their money back, along with cutting waste, fraud, and abuse that we did in this bill. Well, they're citing the same organization that the last time we gave families more of their hard-earned money back, that same group, CBO, said, oh, it's going to add $1.5 trillion to the deficit. Well, Mr. Speaker, we actually have the numbers now, and CBO was just a little bit off. The same people that they cite as gospel on $4 trillion said that we were going to add $1.5 trillion to the deficit back then. You know how much they were off by, Mr. Speaker? The numbers are in. They were off by $1.5 trillion. So they've lost their credibility. But Office of Management and Budget actually came out and said that One Big Beautiful Bill will reduce the deficit by $1.4 trillion. And they don't want to talk about that because every Democrat voted no. Every Democrat voted against, by the way, reforming and revamping America's air traffic control system, which was in that bill. Every Democrat voted no. Every American family wants that air traffic control system reformed. They sure want that tax relief. Those small businesses want to be able to get back up off their feet, and they'll be able to, because House Republicans said, we're going to just focus on doing the work of the American people. And anybody that just wants to go root for failure and continue to try to keep inflation high, interest rates high, and vote no on every bill that puts power back in the pockets of families, let them have to answer for that back home, Mr. Speaker. But we're going to keep working. This bill tonight is part of continuing that trend of getting spending under control. Does it answer all the problems? No. $9 billion, I would say, is a good start. And hopefully we do more things like this. But they're going to come up here and talk about everything other than this bill, because they're all going to vote no. And I think it's important to know, Mr. Speaker, what they're going to vote no against. Let's talk about what's in the bill. They're going to be voting against the $6 million that was spent for net zero cities in Mexico, $8 million for the anti-Israel UN Human Rights Council, a group that is anti-Israel. Why should $8 million of American tax dollars that are being borrowed from other countries be going to that organization? How about we actually get spending under control? $300,000 to hold a pride parade in Lesotho. If Lesotho wants to hold a pride parade, let them do it with their tax dollars, not with American tax dollars. $1 million for voter ID in Haiti. This is rich. They're angry that we're cutting that money off, but those same Democrats that are going to vote no on that will oppose voter ID in America. They're okay with voter ID in Haiti, but they're against it in America. But we'll continue. $3 million, they keep talking about Sesame Street. $3 million going to Iraqi Sesame Street. Again, if the people in Iraq want to have Sesame Street on TV, let them go do it. But how about if they do it with their own tax dollars, not with American tax dollars? Or better yet, they probably can go get it put on one of the many options that the private sector would have. Just like here in America, we've got thousands of private sector options to watch any kind of show you would want. Anybody in America can watch all of that. $33,000 for being LGBTQI in the Caribbean. That's what we're cutting, and every Democrat will vote against that cut. $643,000 for LGBTQI programs in the Western Balkans. So, Mr. Speaker, every Democrat's going to vote against that cut and start talking about, oh my God, the world's going to end and we won't even be able to do diplomacy because we're not going to be spending taxpayer dollars to have a LGBTQI program in the Western Balkans. I think our relations with the Western Balkans will be just fine if we save that taxpayer money and try to get spending under control in Washington. But they don't want to do it, at least we do. $5.1 million to strengthen the resilience of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queer global movements. I don't know what those global movements are. I think they can do that without taxpayer money. And then, of course, funding drag shows in Ecuador. The list goes on, Mr. Speaker. Let's finally get control over waste, fraud, and abuse. We started it in the One Big Beautiful Bill. We're continuing it here, and we're going to continue it through the appropriations process. And if Democrats want to vote no, that's their prerogative. You know, they become the party of socialists. Let them vote that way. We're going to fight for those hardworking families who want to get our great country back on track. Let's pass this bill, keep moving, and keep working towards a better, stronger America. I yield back the balance of my time.